Hello and welcome to the first government analysis function session at this year's Civil Service Live, exploring the role of analysis in government. My name is David Wood and I'm head of the government geography profession in addition to my work in DEFRA. The government geography profession is the newest of the professions to join the government analysis function and is based at the Cabinet Office with the Geospatial Commission. But I have a background in economics and geography, so as well as heading up GovGeo, I've also been a member of the Government Economic Service since 1999, and this dual badging is exactly the sort of multidisciplinary career journey that's available in the analysis function and is one of the things we'll touch on today. So I'm delighted to be here at Civil Service Live and even more delighted to introduce our guests, Head of the Analysis Function, Head of the Government Statistical Service and National Statistician, Professor Sir Ian Diamond.
David, thank you and welcome. It's brilliant to be at Civil Service Live, and it's brilliant to have a bit of time with David to be able to talk about the sort of things the analysis function offers, not only to government, but most importantly to all our citizens. And as David says, I'm Ian Diamond, I'm head of the analysis function, and in addition to that, I am the National Statistician, lead the Office for National Statistics, but I'm also, as you'd expect, a statistician and hence also lead the Government Statistical Service.
Great to have you here, Ian. Now we're going to start by playing a short video about the government analysis function.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that video, and I think it showed really clearly how analysis has really probably never been as important as it is today. And the analysis function, which covers every area of government and many arm's length bodies, has fully 17,000 people working everywhere, and it fulfills a really important and diverse range of roles. The analysis function includes members from a whole set of professions: statisticians, actuaries, digital data and technology specialists, data scientists, economists, geographers, operational researchers, social researchers, and those who work across many disciplines, as David has already demonstrated that he does. They are all people working within their profession, proud, for example, to be an economist or an actuary, but equally proud to work as an analyst addressing big questions, and often sitting next to colleagues from a different profession working on the same analytical problem. In ONS, for example, one of our big surveys has economists and operational researchers and statisticians all contributing to the same analysis. And that's truly exciting because they come from a slightly different perspective, but with the same outcome. Look, I'm delighted to be speaking to such a large audience today here at Civil Service Live and to be able to demonstrate how government analysts are really helping to contribute to better informed decision making and, as we all know, to a brilliant civil service.
Thank you, Ian, and we're delighted to have you here. I should say that if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the chat bar. We'll be collecting them during this session and we'll publish a Q&A on our gov.uk site after today's event. Now, as I mentioned at the start, Ian, I'm a member of the newest profession in the analysis function, the GovGeo profession, as well as an economist. And I think one of the great things about the analysis function is how we facilitate that cross-profession and indeed cross-departmental working. So in your opinion, what do you think about the importance of multidisciplinary working?
Well, I actually don't think it's important. I just think it is totally fundamental to what we are doing. And without it, simply, we would not be addressing the big questions that absolutely have to be done. So it's more than important. Let's just think about some of our government's big problems. Let's just think about net zero. Net zero cannot be addressed by one discipline working alone. It needs geographers and environmental scientists and statisticians and economists, and I could go on and on and on. Government social researchers all working in harmony to address this really big and critical problem. So enabling and making a multidisciplinary environment is absolutely central, not only to what the analysis function does, but also working hand in glove with our colleagues, for example, in the policy profession or indeed in other functions. We, the analysis function, really work hard to facilitate that engagement and to bring professional networks together so that people don't feel there's a kind of different groups who sort of get together, but we have groups who intermingle automatically. So we have, for example, informal Coffee Connect events where you can just get together with colleagues from different professions and have a bit of a conversation about issues, as well as more formal opportunities such as job shadowing or mentoring. We also are absolutely passionate in the analysis function about three things. One, the agenda around standards. So whatever profession you're in, there is a set of standards. Secondly, that there are career structures which enable people to move forward and to know what the learning curriculum is. And thirdly, our communication enables people to understand what they need to do to make their career the absolutely best that it can be. So we do all these things to enable practical ways for analysts to connect with each other, to share best practice, and to make sure that at the end of the day, we're providing the best value for our citizens by enabling a coherent, collaborative workforce full of talented, specialist, multidisciplinary, trained analysts. And that, is the analysis function, but I finish by saying, but we work hand in glove with the other functions to ensure that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts.
Thanks, Ian. You touched on a number of the benefits of the analysis function in bringing together the different analytical professions and opening up and providing opportunities to our members. We're going to move on now by focusing on two very important and prominent pieces of work from the last year: the ONS COVID-19 infection survey and the work on excess mortality in England by Public Health England.
Yeah, I think these are really important pieces of work, and I think again showing that the really important partnership between ONS and Public Health England, which has been, I think, a real privilege to be part of.
Well, indeed, yes. And it's also worth mentioning that the ONS and PHE were the joint winners of the Collaboration Award at the first Analysis in Government Awards. So let's start by first watching a short video about the project.
I'm going to talk about modelling excess mortality across England during a national pandemic. It was mid-March last year, and the first few COVID cases were being detected in the UK. In Public Health England, the health protection side was very quickly overwhelmed. There was a call for volunteers for support, essentially for people who had a bit of time to think. The team was just a mixture of statisticians, subject experts, and data scientists. In normal times, we don't really work together, and we came together in this process. So that was kind of the first aspect of collaboration. So we met with the incident director, and essentially her ask was, can you just help us understand deaths better? We decided to estimate excess mortality. We felt it was a very comprehensive measure of the impact of the pandemic. So excess deaths are the number of deaths over and above what you would expect in a given time period. Within this project, there are 4 aspects where collaboration was really important. Establishing the data flows, so making sure we could get the right data that we needed for this project, but also for other analysts in PHE, to develop the actual methodology of estimating excess deaths. There was also the side of presenting and communicating the outputs to the stakeholder in the best way. And then there was also building resilience in the team. Like it was such a fast pace during the last year. There was so much uncertainty about whether people would be available all the time, etc. So we needed to make sure that this project could continue despite what was going on around us. In terms of resilience, all the code underpinning this used principles of reproducible analytical pipelines, so others could pick it up quite easily, and we've published all the code openly, so people outside of PHE can use it on their data sets too. We use open source software, which means there are no barriers to accessing those software. We version control it using Git and GitHub, and we do package management within the code. We use functional programming, so we can reuse bits of code throughout the project. It's heavily documented, and there's testing within it to make sure any changes in code upstream don't cause issues downstream. Finally, where we publish the reports, we have a way of contacting us. There's a kind of email us address on the report. And that way we're engaging with users on an ongoing basis. People have asked for how can we compare 2 different time periods, which has led to the interactivity of the report. We've had a lot of data requests, so we started to put the data with it. We've changed the subgroups that we contain in the report, and also the way that we do our cause of death analysis. There are ongoing challenges with the report, such as the length of the pandemic, making it quite a challenging question of what is an excess death. We're refining the model on an ongoing basis, and we're continuously looking for improved data sources too. Here's a link to the report, and thank you for listening.
In the Office for National Statistics, we were responsible for creating the COVID-19 infection survey, and we work closely with a number of departments, including colleagues in Public Health England, who, as you've just heard from Seb, did such a great job with the excess mortality in England work. We were able to get the COVID infection survey up and running with the first results in just a week. This involved organising a massively large-scale survey with fieldwork and lots of other quite complicating factors. We were only able to do this because of collaboration. In terms of other government departments, in addition to Public Health England, we worked with the Cabinet Office, closely with the Department for Health and Social Care for very obvious reasons, Department for Education, and we also collaborated outside of government. That crucial role with the academics, that partnership, particularly from Oxford University and expertise from the University of Manchester, hugely important partners. And also other organisations such as the Wellcome Trust, IQVIA, and a number of others. It's impossible just to list them all. I can't think of another example off the top of my head from ONS that has involved quite the amount of academic and expert involvement to the COVID infection survey. So user feedback has described the survey as the jewel in the crown of the UK response to COVID-19, with the results informing key government decisions that have impacted every person in the UK. And that's a big responsibility. There have been many instances where people have been working long, hard hours over weekends till 2 o'clock in the morning, just so that we can meet particular deadlines. What we've found within our short time scale is we have the expertise, we've got the adequate resource there, and if a model runs smoothly, that's absolutely fine. But we do get glitches. There might be something that appears where a model hasn't quite run the right way. There might be something in the data that makes us a bit suspicious, so we want to do some additional quality checks. So it's all these additional things that aren't really built into a normal working day. So it's blood, sweat and tears, really, for how we have managed to produce the data so quickly. I think collaboration in relation to COVID is not as tricky as perhaps collaboration is on other topics. I think there's just a combined sense of wanting life to get back to normal, people wanting to get married again, no lockdown restrictions, being able to go on holidays, visit relatives and so on. So it's not, in that case, COVID is sort of a high priority across pretty much every organisation in some respect. So it's that whole sort of sense of when you're collaborating and you're setting up a new arrangement with a partner or someone you want to collaborate with, if you've got that shared goal, the shared vision, and people can sort of bring their own strengths, different organisations can bring their own expertise and knowledge, having that shared goal really, really helps. And I think that achieving that has been relatively easy with COVID, because you're not up against people who, you know, are enjoying COVID and want it to continue. You know, everyone has that shared aim in wanting to understand the pandemic, being able to measure the pandemic and help inform decisions in the response so that the whole country can sort of get back to normal as soon as possible. So I think that's really helped, that shared vision.
So, as we've seen in, the COVID-19 infection survey was and is an extremely important project. In that video, we heard from colleagues in the Office for National Statistics and Public Health England about their vital role and how important collaboration was to the success of the project. How has COVID-19 caused you to work with people or organisations that you wouldn't ordinarily have worked with?
I think that's a really good question, David. And I think that the simple answer is that we have always pushed for collaboration. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone has worked so well together as colleagues right across government have in the situation of the pandemic. And it is really turbocharged, in my opinion, real collaboration. And we have a real challenge to make sure that we maintain the pace in which we are working. I'm very, very keen that we simply stay at the levels that we work at now. And in the examples you've just seen, really important to recognise, ONS absolutely has strengths in designing complex surveys and doing analysis. But in the COVID infection survey, one of the key things that had to be done was, of course, to collect biomedical data. That's not a normal expertise of ONS. So working in partnership with colleagues at the University of Oxford enabled us to be able to get the skills to do that, and the Wellcome Trust as well being incredibly helpful, and also the absolute way in which colleagues in the Department for Education and the Cabinet Office stepped up to enable this smooth partnership. But of course, it's Public Health England with whom we've worked the most closely. But it's so important, I think, to recognise, David, that everybody plays an equal role in this, and everybody recognizes the skill sets that others have. And while you don't become an expert, perhaps, in some of the biomedical aspects, you have to understand the way in which they are collected. And that's helped us so much. And the thinking that goes on in the methodology, really super important.
Thank you. And obviously, working remotely has been a significant change for most of us. But as well as the challenges, this is obviously brought with it, and presented certain opportunities, notably the ability for people to work with others from across the UK. So in your opinion, how have these opportunities changed for people who don't live in the so-called, Westminster bubble or even London? And do you think this has been influenced by the pandemic?
Well, I think the first thing to say is, of course, that ONS has a very small group of colleagues in London, and most of our analysts are based in Newport and in Titchfield, which is near Portsmouth. But of course, we've done all the work on these studies working from home. And I do think it is important to recognise and to have a big shout out for all those colleagues in IT in different organisations who have enabled and enabled so quickly that people to be able to work from home in a enabling really safe in a cyber way, and safe in terms of people's health and well-being, for example, through the ergonomics, to enable people to work from home for so long. Absolutely wonderful. I use that example because it's another group of people we haven't talked about who have enabled all this to happen. I should say that I've mentioned colleagues from the Wellcome Trust, from the University of Oxford, from right across government, but we've also had really good partnerships internationally. We spend a lot of time ensuring that we're working closely with our colleagues in different national statistics institutes, both some where we have special relationships, such as in Canada, also very close relationships with our colleagues in Ghana, in Kenya, and Rwanda, where we work very, very closely. So international collaboration, incredibly important. And also colleagues, for example, from Holland have been involved in some of the really complex analysis that we do. And I think it is also important to say that we believe that international standards are incredibly important. And so, for example, at ONS, we have really worked hard to ensure that in the calculation of gross domestic product, we, during the pandemic, have been measuring educational and health outputs accurately, and we have been advocating, for example, through OECD, that these should be the international standards.
Great, thanks, Ian. That's wonderful to hear. We're now going to move on to our next video, which is all about innovation in analysis and the wonderfully named Splink data linking project, which was the winner of the Innovation Award in last year's Analysis in Government Awards.
Hi, I'm Robin. I work at the Ministry of Justice, and I work on a team who are modernising our approach to record linkage. So the talk today is going to focus on our probabilistic record linkage software, which is called Splink. And this is a free and open source tool that we've developed to tackle some of the really big record linkage problems that we have at the Ministry of Justice. But what I'm going to talk about today, none of it's specific to MOJ data, so you can use this software to tackle your own record linkage problems. So at MOJ, we've got many different large-scale sources of administrative data from prisons, probation courts, that sort of thing, but there's no single unique identifier which appears in all of these systems. And this means that we have to use personal identifiers to link data together, which is to say we're mainly using things like people's names, their dates of birth, that sort of thing, to try and work out whether they're the same person. In terms of the technical challenges we faced on this project, the biggest one is that there's tens of millions of records which need to be both deduplicated and linked. And those data sets, there's also a variety of different data formats and types, so we need quite a flexible solution if we want to do have a consistent approach to linking that can work with all of these different data formats. Why did we decide to build a new piece of software rather than just use what's already out there? We found there's a FastLink package programmed in R called FastLink. That performs comparatively well. It's rigorous. There's a formal academic paper supporting its methodology. However, it doesn't scale very well. So the FastLink paper itself, actually, it's got a useful chart on it, which is reproduced on this slide, and it shows how how long it takes to link and deduplicate records depending on the data set size. We see that FastLink is the fastest here, and as data set size goes up to 300,000 there, we can see that the record linkage is taking almost 10 hours, I think that is. So you can imagine with tens of millions of records, that's just not going to be practical at all. And that's why we set out to develop a new piece of software, which is called Splink, and that's now available on the internet for you to download. So in terms of the aims of Splink, what it does is it works at much greater scale than current open source implementations. So it scales up to more than 100 million records, and you get results a lot faster. So runtimes are typically less than an hour, even for very large linkage problems. We've got a very transparent methodology so that our match scores can be explained both graphically and in words. In terms of what this has been used for, our biggest linked data set links and deduplicates around 20 million records from the Magistrates Court, the Crown Court, prison and probation. This involves many hundreds of millions of record comparisons. And this link is now automated, meaning that it can be refreshed by running it on a schedule. So at the moment that runs every 7 days and automatically refreshes the link data. So I think that this is a real success story, actually. So we work very closely with Office for National Statistics throughout this. In fact, their methodology team, we met with them early on and to understand how they did record linkage. They were had much more theoretical expertise than us, and also had working record linkage software. So really that sparked off a collaboration where what Splink does is very much taking some of the methodology that was already being used on, say, the census at ONS, turning it into a more complete software package with tests. Now that works complete. We've been working with ONS more, and I know that they're currently using Splink on some of their other record linkage. So that's one example of collaboration. There's also a couple of other government departments who are trying it out, and indeed quite a few people in the private sector. So I think at the moment we've seen, I think we just passed 400,000 downloads of the software, so it's being quite widely used. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. On this slide, we've got the link for Splink, but you can also just type in Splink record linkage into Google if you want to find the software. There's an interactive demo you can do on our homepage where you can load up a Jupyter Notebook in your browser and just try the software out. But I think the key thing I'd like to say here is that Splink is something that can be used for lots of different record linkage tasks. So if you're interested in giving it a try in your department, please do get in contact with either me or my colleagues, Sam and Theodore, and we'd be really happy to help you out. Thanks very much for listening.
So in the analysis function, we're very good at coming up with new and innovative ways of doing analysis, such as Splink. I should say, Ian, in my day job, we have a big thank you to ONS because we've just about to publish our first interactive dashboard for environmental indicators, and we don't have the kind of the platform yet in DEFRA. It's something I'm working on. So we got the Sustainable Development Goal dashboard, which ONS produced, which is open source on GitHub, and we've changed all the colours to DEFRA green, and it's enabled us to piggyback on your innovation by making an innovation in DEFRA. So really great to see that. Now, one of the key elements of Splink is that the results can be visualized in a number of different ways. And analysis has never been more in the news than it has since March 2020. But with all of this comes a challenge of making data accessible to non-analysts and the general public. So Ian, what impact do you think COVID-19 has had on the general public's view of analysis, whether innovative or more traditional forms? And consequently, what do you think is the most important thing to consider when creating data visualization of any sort?
David, thank you very, very much. And I do think the probabilistic linkage is a really, really good example. And I do think that data linkage is absolutely fundamental to the really brilliant analysis we are able now to do. I've been a statistician for many decades, and I can do things now that I only dreamt about for so long because of data linkage. And just to give you an example, in the pandemic, we were able to calculate the excess and really awful effects of mortality due to COVID for people from different ethnic groups. And we were able to do that. Death registration does not include ethnicity, but by linking death registration to census data which had ethnicity. And that was really, really super important in enabling us to understand those excess impacts on people from different ethnic groups, and therefore to act. And I do think that enabling the analysis is one thing, but communicating it is equally important. We have a real responsibility as statisticians and analysts across government to make the analysis accessible, and making sure that that analysis is accessible is a job that requires a real understanding of inclusion, but it also requires that we think very, very carefully about the techniques that we are going to use in order to communicate through visualization our data. People love dashboards these days, and let me be clear, I love dashboards, but dashboards are only useful if they are bringing insight. Data deluge is not what we want. We want insight, and that means that we need to focus down on the questions that we are trying to answer, and we need to visualize those questions in a way which answers the question. Now, that's exactly the same whether you've got a dashboard or whether, for example, you're preparing a graph for a slide that is going to be presented at a press conference. Many people on this call will at some stage in their life have taken a course which included a lecture on the rules for drawing a graph. And the fundamental thing you have to think about is, what is the question I am trying to ask? Does this visualization enable someone easily to see the answer to that question? Has the graph got a clear title? that the axes labelled properly, and fundamentally, can I very easily understand what the key messages are? We have, through technology these days, the ability to visualize data in just the most wonderful and beautiful ways that those of us who started with a pencil and a ruler are just so proud to be able to do. But that doesn't take away the very, very important need to have a clear set of rules and to focus on the fundamental question, what am I trying to convey?
Thanks, Ian. And don't start me on my pet hates in life, which is 3D pie charts. So in your view then, what do you think is most important to keep in mind when producing accessible analysis or communicating results or outcomes of that analysis?
Yeah, I mean, who you're speaking to has to be at the heart of this. And I believe we have, as an analysis function, a really, really, really important role in communicating results which are accessible to every member of our society, every member of population. And when you think about that audience, what are you trying to communicate? I mean, I've said some things already, but it's really important to explain what your thinking was when you developed the analysis. You don't suddenly just sort of, if you like, sit down and say, yes, I'm going to do some analysis. You do so in a grounded way by thinking through what the societal implications of the work are, then what the hypotheses that you may be testing are, and then what the results of your work look like. And I think there's an enormous amount of work that's been done during the pandemic, really to make those communications as accessible as possible. And we've also, I think, put a lot of work into not only making things accessible, but trying to share best practice across government. And I know that right the way through government, right the way through to senior ministers, there's a really, really, really great appetite both to understand data, but also to understand how to communicate data.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ian. And you're right, we all have a lot to be proud of, not just the excellent work on COVID-19, but also in terms of managing business as usual and delivering the census.
Completely agree.
And continuing on that theme, we're going to hear from colleagues, government analysts from a range of professions and working in a range of departments and agencies about why they are personally proud to be a government analyst.
There is a lively debate, as there has been for certainly most of the 20 plus years I've been in the civil service, about what the civil service is good at and not good at the moment, and how we might need to be different in the future. But one of the things that I think we have ourselves all seen is how effective we can be when we do bring all the different sorts of expertise and experience and insight that we have in the civil service, when we can bring that all together to tackle big and difficult problems.
So I'm responsible with my team for helping government make better use of data.
Well, operational research is the application of mathematical and scientific techniques, methods to real-world problems.
GSR members enable government to understand issues relating to society, groups and individuals, and support policy debate and decision-making through a variety of approaches, advice and evidence.
Geography is absolutely core and central to the work of the analysis function.
Actuaries are highly trained experts at quantifying risk, especially those in financial environments such as investment, pensions and insurance.
Cross-cutting policies, cross-cutting legislation to help departments share data more easily, setting standards around data, thinking about data ethics when we're using data, and helping to build capability. So it's a wide range of things.
The name operational research dates back to the Second World War, where a group of very clever scientists at the centre of government were researching how to improve the effectiveness of military operations, hence operations or operational research.
If you look at the big issues that we're facing as society, from levelling up to climate change, to even the impact of the coronavirus, and the different impacts it's had in different places and how we've had to respond, through to if you look at the work of the other professions in the function, and the importance of place to them, be it the supplementary guidance to the Statistics Code of Practice on geography, or if you go through the Magenta book or the Green book, the importance of place, understanding whether policies have had the same impact in all places or not, and why not.
We're able to advise policy professionals on the financial implications of policy options, especially where there are risks and uncertainties. And we work on some very large government liabilities, both actual liabilities and contingent ones. And all our actuarial work conforms to the very highest professional standards.
I graduated 35 years ago, and since then I've always worked in the civil service. My qualifications were in maths, stats and computing, which is a really good platform for doing OR.
I don't think when I set out I would imagine myself being in a role as a senior data specialist, because back eons ago I studied French and German at university.
I started my career in DWP, where I spent over 23 years working for DWP and its predecessor organisations.
And then after university, I went and lived in Japan for 3.5 years, where I taught English. And I came back to the UK, and I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in the public sector, in the civil service. And I started life as a policy generalist in the Cabinet Office.
My career has involved both private and public sectors. I trained as an actuary within the insurance world, having studied mathematics at university.
I joined as a casual social science research officer on a 3-month contract. I have probably spent about half my career working in analysis or part analysis roles, and half in policy or operational policy and delivery.
I had a number of technical, managerial and executive roles in a major insurance business before I switched into the public sector 15 years ago.
Okay, well, I did a degree and then a master's in statistics. During my master's in statistics at the London School of Economics, I read an unbelievably impressive academic paper by a man called Richard Cormack, and serendipitously, he had a PhD grant. I applied for it brilliantly. He gave it to me, and so I did a PhD with him in Scotland, and that was a wonderful experience. And after that, which gave me a real feel for applied statistics and the real opportunities for applied statistics to impact on policy. I worked on Scottish education with Richard.
It has been quite serendipitous with new and different challenges. It's also been one of lifelong learning, though I can't claim to be a very real expert at anything.
I've often described my job as an analytical problem solver, and explaining the complex to the busy is a key part of that process.
I discount my very limited private sector experience lifeguarding my way through university. And good morning, little one. I'm actually recording. I'm recording an interview, and if you're watching TV, can you close the living room door? Sorry, guys. Can we just take a second? Yeah, being a good analyst, I extrapolated the trend of the Easter holidays, and I wasn't expecting teenagers to get up before 10 o'clock.
About a year ago, when I was sitting in DWP, and at that time, the thing we were most focused on was dealing with a huge influx of new benefit claims, or tenfold increase overnight in the number of people applying for universal credit as the first lockdown came into effect.
So I think the last year has been a tough and a challenging one for everybody, really. We've all had to adapt to very different ways of working.
In response to the pandemic, in terms of our world, prisons were a high risk category. It looked rather like a cruise ship in terms of characteristics of being contained and under threat.
The last 12 months have been particularly challenging. No one would have predicted the fundamental change in the ways of working required to continue to deliver while everyone has been working from home. But the response has just been phenomenal. Teams have continued to deliver.
From DDAT, I think the way that we've contributed is probably in some ways and some unseen ways. So the fact that we are able to work fairly effectively remotely will be down to people in and around your organisations who have helped to make that happen, helped that systems can kind of function properly wherever people are working, and also the fact that we're all now much more well versed in having meetings remotely as well, and some of the different platforms that we're able to use for that. So I think there's been a lot of support around helping the rest of government adapt to ways of working.
Increasingly, our actuaries are working alongside other analysts, and often that's the best way for our government clients to use us and maximise the impact of our specialist skills.
Our analysts have contributed across government to the COVID response, be it working on the epidemiological models, feeding into the scientific advisory groups, to logistical support. And there's been wide support for monitoring and understanding the impact of public sector and delivery of public services. This could be through monitoring trade, transport capacity, retail footfall, impact on the business sector, take up of furlough schemes. If we can model it, we've been involved in it in some way or another.
One of the things that I'm very proud of is that during that very intense period last year when UKRI was managing a huge array of requests for funding, we were able to stay in touch with many of you and your colleagues within government to make sure that the research we were funding really was meeting interests that you had.
I think it's really absolutely at the heart of what we want to do in as policy professionals, is to bring together the right expertise in the right place at the right time to help make the right decisions and make the right things happen.
Simulation, problem structuring, systems thinking, modelling, optimisation, and short and long-term forecasting. All this is to help policymakers understand their world and rely on us to provide clear, accurate and timely advice. I think that's key to all of our roles.
Data first, or is the ADR UK funded data support. There used to be a real problems with trying to get administrative data out to researchers, and there's been a number of attempts and it's been really complex and difficult. But actually ADR UK went with a new approach and we worked really closely with them. So I'm really proud of the work we've been doing there.
I think we've had to adapt as a function, and I've had to adapt personally, has been the speed at which we've needed to spin up new services and products, supporting people initially who were shielding, but also making sure that information on things like gov.uk is absolutely up to date for citizens.
So there is a slight problem. Actually, the things I would most like to talk about, I can't yet because they're not published. But I will talk about something else that I am proud of, even though I didn't lead on it. It was a cross-government piece of work. I kind of sponsored it rather than led on it. And it was the cross-government work on the uncertainty toolkit for analysts in government about how to, identify and express and communicate uncertainty. So that came out last year in 2020. And the Winton Centre for Risk and Evidence Communication at Cambridge said that this is an excellent new guide that fills the gaps in previous guides and covers uncertainty and uncertainty communication. So that is something I am proud of.
And if we haven't seen that before, we certainly have over the last year, whether it's on the sort of direct public health response to the pandemic, some other amazing bits of work like the REACT study and bits of work to understand the different responses that we could have. But then even beyond that, dealing with the economic consequences of the pandemic across all these different facets. We've seen how the civil service can bring together from within its own walls, but also convening more widely different sorts of expertise to help tackle difficult problems. And I fervently hope we will carry some of that spirit over to taking the opportunities of what comes next.
And that's important because that's all part of trying to ensure the collaborative work that we've all been talking about earlier, but also giving people an opportunity to build up those skills, whether it's about learning new analytic skills or whether from an academic point of view, it's about really developing that understanding of the policy making process and what that needs from academia.
Across both COVID and non-COVID related projects, and I think one of the most incredibly impressive things of the last year is the way in which business as usual has been continued, while at the same time bringing innovative and radical new ways of collecting data, which have made decision making at the heart of government ever more evidence-based.
It was a really powerful example to me of what it feels like when that investment in intellectual capital over years and generations can be drawn down.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because good data and analysis builds public confidence in government.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because we have the opportunity to shape the public understanding of the pandemic by providing the statistics for the Downing Street press conferences.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because I use my skills to save time, money and lives. I see so many of our colleagues do exactly the same.
Why am I proud to be a government analyst? Because the analysis I do, the stories I tell with data, don't help to make a company more profit. They help government make lives better for people in this country.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because we take the guesswork out of policy making. We help identify more accurately where our national and international productivity needs support and incentives. We reduce the opportunity for political bias, and we help to counter myths that fake news engenders.
I'm proud to have launched the new Digex Academy at the Oil and Gas Authority because upskilling our team and innovating with technology helps us to improve public services for all.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because I get to work with a diverse range of people from across several professions and departments. Every day is different, and it's great to get involved in cross-government projects like Analysis Government Month.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because I'm able to produce evidence that affects policy decisions. The evidence I produce changes citizens' lives for the better.
I can use amazing tools to analyze data to support policy decisions and have an impact on people's lives.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because it's given me the opportunity to really make a difference. By sharing good practice in communicating statistics, I've been able to help people understand the main messages behind our data to inform better decision making.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because the work we do as analysts helps policy colleagues to make informed policy decisions and citizens to understand the world that we live in. The people are great.
Rwy'n falch I fod yn dadansoddi'r Llywodraeth oherwydd allai gyfraniad ymchwil sy'n gallu gwella ein gymdeithas.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because the work we do ensures that decisions can be made using the best available evidence.
Rwy'n falch I fod yn dadansoddi'r Llywodraeth oherwydd rwy'n credu bod gan waith pwrpas ac yn gallu gwneud gwahaniaeth I eraill.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because I know that my work makes a difference.
I'm proud to be a government analyst because every day I get to work with talented and passionate people to improve outcomes for society.
I am proud to be a government analyst because I can get involved in a wide range of interesting projects that improve the way statistics are collected, used and presented across the government, all of which makes a positive difference to our society.
So I'm afraid, Ian, we only have time for one more question. And my final question for you is, why are you proud to be a government analyst?
David, there's 100 reasons, but let me just try and just enunciate some of them. The first thing to say is that I've been an analyst for a very, very long time. And as we said right at the beginning, it is unbelievably exciting that we live in a moment in time when government and our population all see the real need for high-class analysis informing policy that will improve everybody's lives. And it is just, I feel so proud about being an analyst at that time. Proud, but at the same time, if you like, completely committed to ensuring that this moment in time becomes a decade in time and then becomes 5 decades in time, so that we move from where we are now always to be improving and increasing the way in which the analysis function, working so closely with our colleagues in the policy profession, working so closely with other functions, absolutely improves, helps to improve lives right across our society. Second thing I would just say that I'm incredibly proud about, I'm incredibly proud about the way in which the function actually works with a whole set of other people and does so in a very, very equal way to ensure that the analysis is happening. I'm very proud also to be working with such a wonderful group of people at all kinds of levels, people who have been prepared to drop everything and stand up in the last 18 months or so and really help to get results at pace. And I'm really proud of the way in which I'm part of a civil service which is totally committed to improving the lives of all our citizens and is totally committed to doing so by using data and analysis to inform judgments. And that's got to be great. You know, the fact that we have been told rightly by the Prime Minister on many occasions that we are led by the data, not the dates, gives an enormous responsibility to those of us who produce data. But my word, it makes you very proud to have that responsibility. Thank you.
And if you'd like to find out more about the government analysis function, how membership can benefit you if you're an analyst, or how the analysis function might be able to help you if you work in another part of government, like operational delivery or policy, or just to check out our brilliant community and NMD opportunities, you need to head to gov.uk/government analysis function. You can also follow us on Twitter to join the conversation or start a new one at gov_analysis. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to the monthly AF newsletter by emailing us at analysisfunction@ons.gov.uk. So that's all for today. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.